kind of proposed this with a series of talks and sort of based around what I saw as, I guess, the low-hanging fruit. Like, what can we do to sort of improve racing the most? And I think that how we actually spend our time depends on what people want to talk about. So I have this outline based on discussions. It sounds like maybe discussion 2 is going to be about current, which is great because I don't understand the current here at all. So I don't think we're bound at all by this particular outline. I thought maybe a place to start is what do people want to talk about? Like, when you look at this, how do you think we should spend our time today, given the idea that we might have a few more of these, right? So we don't have to get through the whole thing. The way I kind of framed the outline was the first discussion, I put it as sail safe and sail well, because I thought the kind of most important things were, one, don't hit stuff. So how can we not do that? And then number 2, how can we get around the course in a thoughtful way, right? Like, understand what the edges of the course look like, understand how to trim for all the different parts, kind of the most important bits, how to get off the start successfully, that kind of stuff. And then I thought the next bit that would be most important is just how to sail the boat fast, how to set up your trim, how to, how to start thinking about shaping our sails a little bit, how to start thinking about, getting around, turning the boat efficiently without slowing down, that kind of stuff. And then discussion 3 is more about strategy and tactics. So which part of the race course is better? Where do we want the boat to be? Considerations on, is the wind shifting? Do we have oscillating shifts? Do we have persistent shifts? How do we deal with those? Also tactics, so when boats come together, how do you put your boat in an advantageous position? And then I think the final discussion is just a big question mark, so I didn't have anything lined up for that. Again, we don't necessarily have to stick to this. So I just thought maybe go around, ask people what they would like to talk about. I'll write it down. I would write it up here, but it looks like Ian put a lot of work in it. Actually, hang on.
There you go. That's my second word. There we go. Nice.
There it is.
Well, I would just say that I think you got a nice outline here.
Thank you.
And a nice general way of bracketing into 3 different segments. So,
but it would be good to find out. I mean, I think some of us all in here have racing experience, but there might be. I don't know who all is going in. If we need to go from very basic or.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe maybe if we could just maybe just do a quick poll. Like, we don't have to talk to everyone, but if you have strong feelings about how to spend our time, let me know. I'll write it down. So let me start with.
Do you want me to set up a Zoom poll?
What's that?
I can set up a poll on Zoom.
Let's just do it. I feel like we've maxed. I appreciate your technology skills. So people at home, maybe we'll just go in order. Maybe it's easy. So Steve, do you have thoughts about what you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I just thought of something. One of the problems we always seem to have in races is that we bump into each other, and this seems to cause a lot of controversy during the races and after the races. And the thing I started thinking about was there must be some kind of standard width or standard distance that we have to stay away from the other boat from, okay? I mean, sometimes we get a little too close to the boats when we're rounding the buoys. I know about the rule with the 3 boats and, the inside boat and all that stuff, but when we're rounding the buoys, we sometimes get a little too close to each other. Sometimes we go too far apart. We don't want to go too far apart because then we start losing momentum and distance. So is there something in the rules that tells you exactly how many boat lengths away from the next boat to you you're supposed to stay? I don't know if that's too, picayune to talk about, but I'll throw it out there. Certainly a big problem.
About that, because I was thinking about when lured boats are close together, how much room do you need? And the answer is going to be it depends, but I think that's a good thing to talk about. Let's see, who else we got? Marisa, any ideas?
I like what Steve said. So that and, trimming sails, what you have on your summary is really great.
Okay, so sail trim. Yeah, we could spend hours. And let's see, Mark, if you had those.
I don't think I have anything extra except maybe some strategies for start.
And let's see, so I'm having to lean over to see, and Jose, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's a little bit the same thing. It's because we're sailing on the rainbow. The rainbow is a very specific boat, right? And what I'm thinking is all these controls that we can use in the rainbow, focusing on this boat. How can we make sailing more better, right? So the sail trim basically on the rainbow. That's really the something that we can focus on.
Okay.
Which is obvious, right? But yes, just to reinforce.
I think it's important people not try to get a new topic in there. Meaning if all 5 of them really wanted one of those more, it's good to know that because that's what we want to hit.
Oh yeah,
So it's not about getting the width of topics and everybody has to get something else.
agreed. So if you feel like one of these is really important, that's what we'll put up. So George said he doesn't have anything to add, and I see
Beverly asked about courses, how a course is set,
course.
which I can go over when I give it.
Okay, and then let's see, anyone else?
Yes, I have one more.
Okay.
Okay, reefing. Just all about reefing.
Reefing and racing.
Like when you should reef when you're racing?
Yeah, and how to do it.
Yeah, phew. I don't know.
We never got a chance,
But that might be a personality quirk.
Isaac, I've got one.
Yeah.
This is Rob.
Hey, Rob.
Related to what Steve said, just the right-of-way rules, especially when rounding marks. Who has to give to who? Who gets to yell room at the mark? That sort of thing.
Anyone can yell room at the mark. You just don't have
Who legally has a right?
Yeah, there's only one rule that has anything to do with hailing, and that's like an interesting. But
yeah, so hi, this is this Rick Nelson. Just related to the start, because as I understand the optimal starting position is you're kind of going parallel to the start line, but it seems that some racers, they actually attack it kind of directly and try to time it perfectly, and that would seem to be beyond our skills. But I am interested in the difference between kind of being parallel to the start line or perpendicular, if you will.
we'll call that timing and approach. Okay.
Isaac, this is Beverly. I just had a general question about how the courses are set and how that might affect how we attack the course.
So how courses like relative to the winds?
Yes, when Ian decides, when he goes out to set a course, is it depending upon which way the wind is coming, or, like for a while at the end of the season, we were sailing around those boats that were moored there. So I was just wondering what goes in. And for example, the day that we went down the Severn River, what decides that, or certainly with tactics. And then when they had the regatta, certainly the current came into play. So I just have some general questions about, when you start, what is that, how does that affect how racers are going to attack the course?
Okay. And then
Yeah, I was just gonna recommend that we probably want to stick to, race fundamentals and so forth, because sail trim, reefing and all that, I mean, that would all be encompassed in one thing. I think that's a whole session in itself. I mean,
yeah, I think especially
a lot to try to attempt today.
Yeah, my thought for the sail trim was that would be a good, I think there's some really basic sail trim that was like not always great, that could be, that we could look at. And then the rest of it is like, especially with our boats where all the, you don't know, the rigs are probably all at different tensions, the sails are different, that's a long discussion for sure. Well, thoughts? Penalties?
No problem for that.
Molly, nothing?
Oh, can I go? I put it on the online too, but it's the question of what angle is the better approach to attack, to go upwind based on the cone. So like how to figure out which is a more direct route based on the wind.
Like which tack to go on?
Yeah, which tack to go on.
Which tack? Okay.
Versus also current. So say maybe one tack is better, but you know, you have to take a current or where the wind would be better. So like all these are different things to consider.
Yeah, I think that falls into sort of what I was thinking of this. Okay, some thoughts I had. I think tacking. I really want to talk about tacking because I feel like people lose a ton of distance when tacking. I want to talk about like crew responsibilities. You know, how to get the team, you know, working together as well as possible. Let's see. Okay, I think this is a good place to start. And also, by the way, I don't want people to think like I'm the only one who gets to hold a marker. I would prefer, like I'm happy to sit down now and not do any more. I made this list.
You spoke up, it's yours.
I think, fair enough. Okay. So I mean, let's start with not crashing. Seems like a good thing. So few things that come to mind to me when from the races around here is, you know, I'm surprised there aren't more collisions at starts because that seems to me the most complicated time to like not hit another boat is at the start. Tacks are a real issue, especially like near the windward mark. So I thought thinking a little bit about when you get in that terrible spot at the windward mark that we get into sometimes, like what do you do? Also, I think worth talking about is how not to get there. So, oh yeah, that reminds me, another thing I want to talk about is leeway. I feel like talking a little bit about how a boat doesn't actually sail straight forward is important. Okay. So on my little outline, I have a thing about like responsibilities of right away and giveaway boats. I brought the racing rules. I assume everyone is sort of like fairly familiar with them. I want to talk a little bit about just how they're set up. So when you do read them, you get a sense of what they mean. You know, the first like 10 pages or something is almost everything we actually ever cover. You know, we don't do there's a lot of stuff that never comes up really.
Like race management, all kinds of crazy
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, like this is a big rule book, but the first like 10 pages is almost everything we ever do. I think the big things I wanted to highlight is, first off, just to point out, I think it's rule 3, which is decision to race. So this comes up, I think, when it's like really breezy or if you feel out of your element or something. One of the rules is it's always your decision whether you race or not. And so if you get out and it's like not for you, then that's time to say like, you know, you don't have to do it. And I think, you know, one thing is making sure everyone feels within their abilities. I think there was, you know, one collision caused by someone like tacking when they meant to bear away, you know, because it was just like maybe wasn't quite ready to be, you know, on the helm in those conditions. I think that's condition dependent. So I just wanted to highlight that. The other thing I wanted to point out is, so the way the rules go for part 2 is when boats meet is the first section A is right away. So these are the basic rules: port starboard, overtaking, which almost never happens, overlap, and tacking. Then the rest of it are limitations and changes to those basic rules. So those basic rules always apply, except there are some limitations, and that's what part B is. And then part C is those rules don't really cover marks and obstructions, so we have this whole segment of complicated special rules for this. But generally the way to think about them is basic right away, but there are limitations on that, and marks and obstructions have special rules. One of the basic restrictions is, or limitations, is avoiding contact. So even if you are in the right, if you hit someone, that's a violation of the rule, right? And the rule is you don't have to act to avoid until it's clear that you need to. But the moment that is clear, you have to immediately act or you violated the rule. And if there is any damage or any injury at all, then you're disqualified for that collision, even if it's a small one that makes a tiny bit of damage. If you were part of that, that's it, you're done. If you did not act to avoid contact. It does say if reasonably possible. So, you know, if you did everything you could and you still got hit, you don't get disqualified. But if you were just like, it was my right of way, then you're disqualified. Another thing that matters here are the definitions. So anything in italics in the rules is defined. Those definitions are really part of the rules as well. And I just want to point out the keeping clear. So if you're the right of way boat, the other boat is the keep clear boat. So if you do not have right of way, you are only keeping clear if the right of way boat can sail her course with no need to take avoiding action. And if the boats are overlapped, the right of way boat can change course in both directions without making contact. And so I think, Steve, this comes to your question, like how close can you get? It depends on the conditions, and it depends on how fast the boats maneuver, and it depends on how close you're watching. So if these boats are sailing upwind here, right? This boat is the right of way boat, it's lured. This boat must keep clear. If this boat is right here, it is not keeping clear. And that is because the right-of-way boat can change course in both directions without making contact. It can't, right? If this boat tries to bear off, it's going to hit the keep clear boat. If this boat tries to come up, it's going to hit the keep clear boat. On the other hand, if they're this far apart, it might be fine, but it's only fine if this boat is watching closely enough that as soon as this boat starts to come up, it's able to come up, right? And so how close you can get depends on like how comfortable you are quickly maneuvering. And don't forget your stern is gonna, so if you like, you know, throw your tiller over and you hit that boat, you've fouled them. So you need to give them enough room that they can change course and then you can respond. That's because if you keep clear, your obligation is to stay out of their way.
Does the right-of-way boat have an obligation to tell you that they intend to turn?
No, they do not.
Can they? Like, so the blue boat there needs to get out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm this boat, I'm always saying, you got to keep clear, blue. Give me room. And I think I kind of have a list I wrote of like kind of big ideas that, come through. One is staying out of trouble is good for you. Like, even if you don't have to be like, give me some room. And the other boat doesn't have to listen to it. There's no like binding rule that goes to it, but it's a good idea to telegraph your intentions a little bit. I think staying out of trouble, even when you're in the right, always pays off. So
it's actually a very good example. This happens when we go windward versus leeward. When you come around, the two come around at the same time. This exact scenario plays out.
Oh, when you're going around like the mark, like when they're coming around like this.
And then you want to come back up. But the boat windward is always blocking the leeward one from making the choice to come up.
Come back up when, so the windward boat can't. So if the leeward boat tries to come up and they can't, I mean, I would yell at them and then you would say protest because you weren't able. But what you can do is if they're here and you're here, they didn't foul you until you can't sail your course. So you can't say,
right.
I want to, like, if you're this boat, you're like, I want to come up, you fouled me, because they didn't. But what you do is you come up, and then if they don't come up, or if they get too close, then you got to bear away, avoid contact, and then you could protest.
Cool.
I mean, I probably wouldn't out here, but technically they fouled you, right?
But Isaac, we actually have had where we're at the windward turn that we have 3 boats. So it dominoes down, right?
Yeah. So this is wind. I'm going to pretend it's the mark. So if that wind thing is the mark,
right?
Everyone can see this.
Pick a different boat. The yellow boat doesn't work.
There you go.
There you go.
Pirate red boat with a black flag and regular red boat. So So right, so here you have right away boat. This boat is right away over the windward boat. This boat is giveaway boat to this boat. So basically this boat's in charge, right? And as long as this boat did not
Depending on how they approach, right?
yeah, so it could be limited by its proper course. Although actually, no, there's no proper course because proper course is sailing higher than, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so that boat does not have to turn ever. No. No, that's
Yeah, I
incorrect.
was gonna say, if the blue boat came in,
Yeah, so if this boat came in from clear stern, then it has what's called a proper course restriction, which means it can't just sail in this direction forever because just to mess with these two boats.
right.
But this is kind of a,
Force them up, right?
yeah, this proper course rule I feel like is maybe not one for the like hour and a half we have left, but
How do you decide that? Like when?
proper course. So proper course is how you establish your leeward overlap. If you establish your leeward overlap from clear astern within 2 boat lengths, then this boat, if you come from behind to leeward, you're bound by your proper course, which means you can't sail higher or lower than you would if these boats weren't there. So you have to sail like, you can't just go on forever just to mess with the other boats. You have to sail the course you would sail otherwise. On the other hand, if you got your overlap by tacking in
Yeah.
to leeward, you have no bounds. If you have the right of way, you can do whatever you want. Again, it's not a good idea for this boat to like sail this way, just to like mess with those guys a little bit.
Right.
But you could. You would be within the rules. If you were match racing or something, that might be an appropriate thing to do.
Or team
but
racing.
but not generally for our fleet racing. But when you go around the mark here, yeah, so this boat has to give this boat plenty of room, which means if that boat's stern is going to swing over, this boat has to see that, right? You have to, another one of the sort of things I wrote down that come up a lot is you need to think ahead about what's going to happen. So if you're not thinking ahead about, as this boat turns around the mark, its stern is going to swing around, you might not give it enough room. So you need to visualize the course this boat is going to take.
But if he came up on a port tack, the blue came up on a port tack up to the mark, tacked in, yeah.
Okay.
So, and then tacks, they don't gain the right of way then, right?
This boat here?
Yeah.
Once he's on starboard tack, yes.
Once he, okay.
He has no rights when he's
Okay, but
tacking.
if he tacks in the zone, he can't force that.
There's,
But I mean,
there's no zone in the windward mark though.
There's no zone at the windward mark?
No.
No, there's a zone at the windward mark for sure.
But it,
The 3 boat length? The windward?
I
No.
thought that was lured.
Yeah, so the windward,
yeah,
No.
no, there's a,
Just down there.
that's what I was, because we've had
Um,
that happen before.
yeah, the,
I mean, I'm not a rules expert, believe me, but I have definitely come in on port tack, established starboard tack, and then taken boats out.
yeah, so the zone is the area around a mark within 3 distance, and it doesn't specify whether it's windward or leeward. The rule here is 18.3C, which is,
If you tack in the zone, you can't force that boat above close off.
yeah, exactly. So when you're, yeah, so it's 18.2 B and C. So B is if, hang on.
When you say zone, you mean 3 boat lengths?
Okay, 18.3. So if a boat in the zone of the mark to be left to port passes head to wind from port to starboard and is then fetching the mark. So if this boat, so if these boats are here, this boat comes in and tacks and is fetching the mark. So it doesn't count if it's here, it's not fetching the mark, but it's fetching the mark. She shall not cause a boat that has been on starboard tack since entering the zone. So this boat has been on starboard since entering the 3 boat length to either sail above close haul. So if, for instance, so here's the thing. Let's say this boat is just barely fetching the mark, not overstood at all. Then if this boat comes in and tacks, like let's say we can get a tack in right here. This boat's going to be faster, right? If this boat has to luff around the stern of this boat, then blue has fouled red. Also, if this boat is able to get a leeward overlap, blue must give red mark ring. So basically tacking at the mark, the only time tacking at the windward mark really works is if, like tacking right at the mark, is if this boat is far enough away say down here, that you can complete the tack and not force this boat to go above head to wind,
We did that.
right? So you got to be pretty quick at tacking, right? If you are slow at tacking,
Well, and plus at a rainbow, that's gonna stall you out anyway. I mean,
yeah, I mean, especially if,
Good racing tactic, to be honest.
yeah, generally you don't want to be coming in here most of the time. The other time it does work is when the other boats are overstood. So if this boat is here, right, you can tack in the zone right inside that boat because you're taking advantage of the fact that they overstood. Then you're not violating a rule because you've got the room to get around, and you did not make them go above close haul. So that's safe, and if they're far enough behind, but they're on the ley line and going to catch up with you, then you're probably going to foul them. In that case, the thing to do is to, if you're ahead, is cross. So if you're coming in on port tack and you know you're crossing this boat, go ahead and cross, like completely cross,
Then make it, yeah.
and then tack here. So you're gonna be outside, right? And this is where like tactical stuff comes into play. This outside position is not great, especially if you just follow them all the way around. Because if you just follow them all the way around, you're way back here. Yeah, that's a bad spot. You've lost the boat for sure. The thing to do for this boat, especially let's say there are 3 boats stacked up, is don't follow those boats all the way around. Go head up a little bit, get right behind them, so that you can't get in the mark. You have no mark room. So don't try to put your nose in there. But follow them, and you've kind of come up. You can drop way down. So as they're over here, you're now here, right? And so you're much closer. Like you haven't. This boat went around, right? You've gained on that boat, and now you're in much better position to sail against this boat than if you'd gone around the outside and you would have been pushed. So it's much better to round the mark, close to the mark, very close astern. So slow down and just follow right on their stern than it is to go all the way around like the big circle around. You're gonna sail way more distance. So, if I'm in this position where I'm coming in, I'm very sorry about your drawing.
That's okay. I don't think we're gonna get there today anyway.
If you're like coming in here, if I can, I cross and then tack, and then I try to follow close to their stern. I try not to get overlap. If this boat is like clearly going like this, then I feel safe like dipping in there, but you have no room, you have no right to do it. So if that boat tries to close the gap, you would foul them. So you don't really want to do that as a matter of course. What you'd rather do is follow them close astern. Instead of being out here, you're now here. You're actually further downwind, and so you haven't lost as much room to them. You're in a better position to attack. And also downwind, you're have an advantage here because you're to windward. So if the wind's here, you're able to impact their wind downwind. Let's see. The other thing I wanted to say about I feel like I had another point to make here. I forget what it is. Tacking and crossing. Do you all know how to tell if you're tacking or if you're crossing another boat? Like, let's say this boat is here.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how do you know if you're crossing safely?
Their angle of view doesn't really change.
What's that?
Their angle of view doesn't change. You'll see them stay consistent angle off of you.
Yeah, the trick is, exactly. The trick is to look at a distant shore. So take a sight from you to their boat to something way off in the distance. And it has to be pretty far. If it's close, it doesn't work. But if it's pretty far, you sight that distant object between you and their boat, and then you see which boat is, if that distant object stays lined up the whole way, then you're on a collision course. If on the other hand, it looks like the other boat is going forward, in other words, like the land is kind of disappearing in front of the other boat, they are crossing you, right? You're behind them. And then if it looks like land, like the boat is moving backwards, I've heard that called making trees, like you're making trees, then you're crossing them. But you gotta be careful because you can be crossing them and then you get a little wind shift, right? Or you slow down and you're not crossing them. And one big like anti-collision thing I wanted to point out. One is make sure you are evaluating early and continually evaluate whether you're crossing. And then as you get close, like if you need to duck, if your main sheet is on hard and it's blowing, your main sheet holds your bow up, right? And if you're heeled over, that adds to the what's called weather helm. So your boat is heeled over. All of the sails are trying to make you round up to weather. You can get to the point where you actually like can't bear down, right? And so you want to bear down, instead you just T-bone this boat. So what you have to do is make sure your main sheet is ready. If you need to do a fast duck, get your main sheet off, right? Because that main sheet is holding your bow up. So make sure you can take the main sheet, uncleat it, ease it off a bit to do the duck. It's faster anyway, right? And to do a good duck, I would say to my crew that if we do a good job, the other boat's going to feel a little bit nervous because if you duck like this, you're going to get smoked. The way you want to duck is boats are going here. You want to start early, and then you want to round up right there, right? As close as you can get to that position. I mean, this boat is right. Because you want to aim for that corner of their boat, and so you want to take kind of like a round, like ease, dive, trim in, and then you're right there. So that's how you duck. If you do this, duck, round, then you're down here. But if you are, let's say this boat is going this way. This is what so if they're coming here, if you wait too late, do this, and then try to round up, you're back here. So if instead we're coming, you start your duck early, you make them feel nervous, you round up right around their stern, then you've saved yourself a bunch of bookmarks. And so so ducking is best done early, and the ease of the main for safety and also for speed, and then aim for this part right here. That also applies around the mark. So one of the things I see around the windward mark a lot is boats will come around the windward mark with their sails on, and I'll be focusing on trying to turn the boat and not trimming sails. And so what happens is they try to bear down, and they try to bear down, and they're out here, and they're turning, and they're turning. And then if you're a boat that eases your main right here, like ease your main, then it comes right down. You don't have to ease your jib super fast, because having your jib on pulls the bow of your boat down. But easing your main lets the boat turn, lets it turn much faster. So when you get to around this mark, ease your main first. Your jib trimmer can be a little slow, and get down as fast as you can. And if you have it on, everything on hard, you're going to get held up, and you're going to be up here. You've left a big hole right here. It's the opposite with the leeward mark. So when you're coming around the bottom mark, your main helps you point up. I've seen a ton of people come around the bark like this. They start their turn kind of right here, and then they end up down here. The way you want to come around that mark is, if you can, if you have a boat to here, you might not be able to, right? If you have a leeward boat, they can hold you right against the mark. But if you have your druthers, what you're going to do is come to the mark, give it a little bit of room, and then start your turn early, trim your main end. And this is really hard on a rainbow with the aft sheets. And the thing that's, what I do is I have my crew trim in the main. Here's the main, I'll say go, just trim it in. And so they'll trim the main all the way in. That helps the boat turn without using my rudder, which causes drag. And then you want to like wide and tight like a race car around this mark. And the other thing that I see a lot is when people come around the leeward mark, they either end up here or here, neither of which is close hauled, right? So they either completely stall out the boat, or they're sailing here and they've got their sails completely trimmed in, so they're completely stalled. So this boat's in irons, this boat's stalled, and they just lose tons and tons of speed. So part of thinking ahead here is, when I come out of this turn, where am I going to be pointed, right? If the wind is coming from here, I'm going to be close hauled like this. What land is that going to be? So before you get to that mark, picturing your turn and your exit will help you get to that point, because either of the options, these options are really slow, and a really good way to get around a boat is just a good turn around this leeward mark. So think about where you're going to be pointed. Give the main sheet to your crew, and you can trim in the jib, but the jib is less important. It's like the opposite of the windward mark. The jib is going to pull your bow down. So bring your jib in a little slow. You want to bring it in, but it's not the most important. And you don't want to bring it in too fast. So bring your main in right here, so that when you get to this point right here, you're close to the mark, you're full trimmed, and you're on a close haul course, and then you'll exit fast.
Should you turn your arrow down?
Yeah, I was treating that as a mark,
That's a mark, yeah.
as opposed to the wind.
Okay.
Yeah.
It can be both.
Yeah. Let's see. So what have we talked about? Less crashing right away at marks? Not really. Boat to boat distance, kind of. I feel like starts are a good thing to talk about.
Can I just do my little
Yeah.
real quick because I got to roll in like 20
Yeah,
minutes.
perfect. So Ian was going to talk about the ladder rungs.
So I mean, this goes to what Beverly was talking about with visualizing the race course, how I set it. And I've noticed sometimes I set the marks out there and you're like, where's the starting line? It's like, and it's somewhat obvious to me, but for some of you guys, it's less. So I think this is a way to help you guys see that. What you need to understand is that the race course is dictated by the fact that the boats have to tack. Okay, so that's kind of what sets it. Boats tack at right angles. So you're 45 degrees to the wind and 45 degrees to the wind. That's a 90-degree angle. So in theory, if I set a good course, the starting line would be in the middle, right here, directly perpendicular to the wind. Okay. And here's the question: is which one of these two boats, A or B, has to sail a longer distance to the starting line, to the finish, to the windward mark?
A.
A has to sail longer.
That's what I think.
What are you just differing?
I think if they're on the same ladder run, they're the same distance.
They're the same distance. They're exactly the same distance. So it does not matter because obviously A is shorter, right? What, 28 inches to the windward mark, and B is 38 inches. But because they have to tack, right, that right angle, this guy's going to go right here to the lay line and then up. They're going to be the exact same distance. So it doesn't matter. So even if I set, even as long as I don't set a horrible line, there was one line I set that was really bad. But it doesn't matter where on the start line you cross. You have to sail the exact same distance. Okay? So, I mean, this is all they're going to work out exactly the same, no matter what part of the line you're at. Okay? So, when you see a boat, another boat, can someone hand me a boat? And if you've ever seen dinghies, like if you go out there on the Club 420s that are out there, you'll see lines the guys make on the boats. They'll have lines like this. Oh, work it all. There you go. Lines like these, amidships. See that? You guys see that on the camera? And what that does is allow them, when they're sailing, if you're on you'll know that every boat that's parallel with this line is on your same ladder rung. So that's how making trees the same way. And when you're going upwind, you know that this boat's on this mark are on your same ladder rung. You can tell. That make sense? So the idea is then to visualize yourself on the race course. So when you see the wind, it's coming from above, and then you see the starting line. The starting line should be somewhere in the middle of the race course, perpendicular to the wind. So that's how you can just start to see it. And then you start to see, once you start to see the start, then you can start to see where the ladder rungs are in your head. Does that make any sense? So it's about just creating that image in your brain. So it's like, someone said sailing's like playing chess, but someone throws water on you and you tear up $100 bills at the same time. But this is the chessboard. So you've got to see the chessboard is like the fundamental piece. And then as the wind shifts, these ladder rungs change. And that's, I think, a lecture for a different day. That's what was up there before. Um,
Was.
but you can, small wind shifts, if you're on opposite sides of the course, make huge differences. You can gain 6-7 boat lengths in a 5-degree shift if you're far enough apart. So if one boat goes this way off the starting line, another boat goes this way off the starting line, and the wind goes this way, right? This boat gains a lot. And I'll show you another day. But that's one of the ways. Is like, how did I sailed well, I trimmed great. Why did I round 10 boat lengths behind the other boat? Well, you probably missed a wind shift. If you trimmed right and your speed was good and you lost tons of ground, the wind shifted and you were on the wrong side of it. And you had to sail legitimately more distance to get to the windward mark. So, any questions?
If it went that way, why did that one gain? Why did A gain?
It's,
You'll have to show us.
yeah, I'll have to show you. It makes sense if I show you all the diagram. I'll do another diagram for another day.
Okay.
But it's the actual course changes. So the ladder runs start to go like this. And this guy will be on a way down here ladder run compared to this one. And then once you tack, you're closer to the mark.
I mean, you just think of the point of that kind of arcing towards that
right
shift. And then your ladder runs change to that.
Sorry.
Went that way, the ladder runs go this.
No, let's say you think of this as a center. It shifts.
Right.
So as the wind shifts, it shifts. So it's going to be going this way. You're going to be off, you know.
So if the wind shifts to here, then the ladder runs go like this.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah. But I'm just saying that directly affects it.
So then if you
now A is ahead.
He's far. Yeah, he's a lot far.
See how this boat's on this ladder run?
He's right there.
And this guy's over on this. He lost 3 ladder runs. Excuse me.
Ian?
Yes.
What's the quickest way to discover that the wind is shifting on you?
It's the same when the rainbows, because you don't have a compass. The compass works great, and it might be something worth carrying. But if you're looking at your horizon and you're pointed at a tree or a radio tower or something on the Naval Academy grounds, and you're pointed at it, and all of a sudden you're not pointing at it anymore. You're turning to the left or falling off away from where you were, you're getting headed. So that's time to tack. If you were pointing at an object, say you're on starboard tack and you're pointing at an object, and now that object's underneath your sails, you got lifted. So don't tack. Unless you think the breeze is going to keep going that direction, in which case you would tack. But generally our races are short enough that we don't have steady veers but every once in a while we'll have those righties, like the sea breezes that come out of the south. They tend to go right as the evening goes on until they die. So that's why sometimes the right hand side of the course will always work better, but it depends on the wind direction and
where you're sailing. If you go up the river, it changes.
Yes, it's really shifty. Beverly, did I answer your question about how the courses get set?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, so if we're doing a distance race, like we're going to markers, then there is there's no real windward mark. We just go at the mark wherever we're trying to go. So, but if we're doing our normal around the buoys, that's just I try to set a windward mark and I try to set a line that's perpendicular to the wind. And again, if I set them at 4 o'clock, we get out there at 5. Sometimes they're not quite right. I try to move them, but it's tough. Any other questions? All right, back to you, Isaac.
I feel like this is a good time to talk about stars.
Okay.
That sounds good. And the one thing about the ladder rungs that I think that's helpful for me to visualize is that, this is drawn as a triangle because these are the ley lines. So as long as you're inside these ley lines and the wind doesn't shift, you're going to sail the same distance no matter which side you're on. So if the wind is steady, the current is steady. As long as you're anywhere in here, you're on the course. If you sail too far, so this is I don't know if everyone knows what a ley line is, but this is, if you are close hauled on starboard tack, this is the line that takes you to the mark. If you go too far and you sail close hauled, you're going to be up here. So that's called overstanding. So as long as you're in here, you're not sailing any extra distance, no matter which tack you're on, no matter which way you go. The start's a little different, but once you're on the course, it's all the same distance. Doesn't matter if you tack 10 times or go all the way to this line and then tack over, same distance. If you go outside these lines, you've sailed extra distance. So you got to sail extra distance going this way, and then you got to make it up. You will be not close hauled, so you'll be a little faster. So you don't, it's not always a bad move to overstand a little bit, but that's what happens. The other thing I wanted to say about this ley line is how to know when you're on the ley line. And so ranging is a really important idea. So if you want to know if you're making the mark or not, so if you're a boat right here, look at the windward mark and then find what it's pointing at in the distance. If that stays lined up, if that transit stays true the whole time, then you are pointed right at the mark, right? Whether your boat might be pointed this way. If there's current, it's going to push you down, right? You might be sailing this way in current, right on that ley line. Or even if there's no current, your boat has to make a little bit of leeway. That is, it can't sail straight. It's got to go sideways a little bit. And that's because if it doesn't go sideways, you don't get any lift from your keel. So the keel is like an underwater airfoil or like an underwater foil. And the only way it works to develop lift is the exact same way as any foil, right? Air or water coming to the foil straight on doesn't provide any lift. You need an angle of attack. The way you get that angle of attack with the keel is by making a little bit of leeway. And the faster you're going, the less leeway you make. So if you've ever been like coming into the dock and you feel like you're going sideways and it doesn't make, it's probably because you're not moving. And so if you don't have any forward movement, like when you try to trim your sails in, you just kind of like go sideways until you get that forward moment. So pointed at the mark does not mean fetching. What it means fetching is if you take that transit to something distant and it stays lined up, you're fetching. Or if you're making trees, you're fetching. If you're losing trees, you might think you're here, but you're here. And it's way better to know that here than figure it out here, be like, wait, I thought I was fetching, but I'm not. Because here, this is a bad spot. So if you can not get here, your life is better, right? You could get a nice lift, right? You could be here and not, or you could be, you think you're here, but you're really not fetching. And so maybe the wind shifts and it takes you to the mark. But, probably you need to take a little right and then a left. And when you can do that more on your terms, like when you're fast, it's better. Same thing with the start line, by the way. So one thing about the start line is, how do you know when you're at the start line? It's very hard when you're a boat right here to see both marks at the same time, to know if you're on the start line. So I thought it might be nice to talk about people's start sequences, how they go into the start, what their plan is, what they're thinking about. One thing that I always do is before a race is I'll come right at the start line like this. And so I'll look to see what do these things line up with on land up here. And so then in my mind, the start line basically becomes this mark and whatever this is on land up here. That way, when you're actually approaching the mark, you just look at this mark in that piece of land, right? And if that piece of land, if you're looking this way, is going to be behind the mark. So you're not on the line, not on the line, not on the line. Once they line up, you're on the line. You got to be a little careful because if you're spotting it from, technically, that's where you are, right? So you need to make sure you give yourself a little bit of leeway. But two things I always do before the start is try and get a line sight. And it's almost always from the boat mark to the pin mark, because you almost always start on starboard and you're looking this way, right? So this is the best sight you can get. The other thing I do is I usually come somewhere close to this mark here and I will go headwind. And this is because of the ladder lines. So Ian tries to set a course that looks like this, but the wind shifts around, right? So if I come up to the mark, let's say I come up to the start line. Let's say the start line is actually set like this. Let's say this is the start line because the wind has shifted. So I'll come up to the start line, I'll get my line sight, and then I'll come up to this mark and I'll go head to wind. When I go head to wind, I'm pointed this way, right? So the line is here, I'm pointed here. I know the line is not square. I know that I am pointed, like if I was square to the line, I would be pointed this way, right? This is square to the line. I am left of square to the line. I am square to the wind. If I'm square to the wind, pointed this way, my bow is a little closer, like it's pointed at this mark over here. That means this mark is upwind. If you look at the ladder rungs, if you start over here, you're starting 2 ladder rungs ahead of the other boats, right? And so that's how you can tell which side of the line is favored. If the line is square, it's all even. But if the wind is shifted or if the line's not square, one mark is going to be better than the other. And I like to do it next to the mark because it's easy for me to sight the line. And you can do it in the middle or over here. But I'll just ease on my sails, go head to wind, and see which way I'm pointed. Just be careful because once you stop, you have no maneuverability. And I'm sure Ian will be mad if you like take the pin, take the boat mark out. So, you know, you may want to do it like down here, you know, give yourself some wiggle room. But
and you can cross the line, right, until the
yep, there's
time. Yeah.
There's unless there's I think a black flag, is that there are like restrictions in like that some fleets will use.
But I mean, as far as our type race,
the line is only material at
Once the
like when
last
the gun
one.
goes off. Yeah.
1 minute.
I'm curious what people use for like their starting. Like what's their how do you plan it out going in? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think Rick brought up earlier about parallel to coming up straight onto the line.
Yeah, like
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's kind of also wind condition determination, because if you have a very light wind, it's hard to do parallel to the starting.
you mean
line.
like coming in like this or from
Yeah.
port?
Well, I would do starboard. I would prefer
Coming
to
in-
be
coming in
starboard,
from
right?
here,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'd prefer to be starboard, but because if it's lack wind, once you turn, you lose speed going across the starting line.
Once you turn up to the
Yeah, if you're turning up into the starting line, if that's your tactic. But if you're coming straight onto the line, if you time it right, you've got speed.
yeah.
That's just my, and that's what I'm here to learn, you know, if that's
Yeah, I think you can maintain. So you should be able to maintain speed coming in like this because you're coming on a beam reach. So if you trim in, you know, if you come in and trim, if you're boat handling and crew work and all that, if it like all goes well, then you should be able to stay fast on that approach. I use this approach a lot. I think it works really well in our fleet. It is a dangerous approach in a like when
you're
the fleet
cutting
gets
off a
competitive.
lot of those people that are coming straight.
Yeah, because I'm down to marker boats, but
When I've done it, I always seem to get in trouble because now there's boats that are coming more perpendicular to the mark.
like this. Like you're coming in here and their boat's here.
And now I got to give way because, so to me, it seldom works.
Yeah, this is a dangerous. It's called barging.
Yeah.
And it's a dangerous start because this boat is lured. So if this boat is lined up right on the mark
Right away.
and timed, this boat has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have to duck this boat, and then you're going to be late for the line.
Yeah.
So in a good fleet where there's always a boat here, the barging start is really dangerous. I think in our fleet, we tend to have what I would call conservative starters. So there's often a hole there. So you can't, Carrie always comes in like this. Carrie always comes in like just does her little like dips. She does a dip start, ducks the line, comes around, and comes in. I think as the fleet gets better and better, the starts are going to be because we have 10 boats on the start of all that. That's a lot of boats. So if you have 10 boats lined up here, that's like the whole. I mean, we could have the start line packed out with boats all like
at the same time.
all bow to bow, and then getting a good start is about getting your bow. If you're the leeward boat, you've got to be bow forward. If you're bow behind, like this, you're getting shadowed the whole way. So if you've got a boat on your windward tip, you've got to be bow forward if you want to start, and not just get completely rolled by that boat. What else do people do?
Well, to me, the ideal spot to be is starboard tack, close to the red dot there. Because now you're in the privileged position, or you have the clean air,
yeah.
and you can turn, you can tack whenever you want.
Yeah.
If you're downwind of all those people, you're constrained in your maneuverability.
Yeah. That's
Unless
right.
it's 1 or 2 rounds higher.
That's right. If you want to get to the right side of the course, so this is where the plan comes in. Like if you're like, there's more wind, there's better current, I want to be to the right, then part of executing that plan is start at the right. Because if you start at the left, you can't tack until everyone goes, or else you're taking everyone's straight. On the other hand, if the left is favored, then being out here gets you out to the left faster. So part of that goes into thinking like, which other course is better?
Yeah. Have you answered that question yet?
No.
Follow Isaac.
No, when I get the current right, I feel like I luck into it. I find the current around here really hard.
Well, and I think the wind too, depending on, the shore affects the wind a lot. So sometimes it's better to be away from the shore, get clearer air. So that I think is another big factor.
I always feel a stronger breeze out as opposed to going closer out.
I always feel like in a flood, there's like a wind advantage over here and like a current advantage over here. I don't know.
It is
I just try to, and honestly, the point of this is if you sail close hauled well, like you're in the top half of the fleet, right? If in that first and one of the things I had written down earlier is not all parts of the race are equal, right? The most important parts of the race are when the boats are closest together. So the start, and not just the start, but the 2 minutes after the start. If you want to know how well your start is, how good your start is, you got to wait 2 minutes because everyone starts, you're on the line, but you're slow, you're going to get rolled, and then you're not going to be able to hang. On the other hand, if you start bow out, then you and this boat are in a battle. And if you're sailing high, like if you have everything trimmed in, you're going fast, and you can hold this boat up against their will a little bit, they're going to go slow, and they're also sailing in a little bit of a header from your sails. So your sails redirect the wind. The wind is coming this way. So if you're on starboard tack, the wind is getting pushed by your boat a little bit. Which is why if you're here and another boat is here, the wind that's getting pushed by your boat is not just the wind that's hitting your boat, it's all the wind around it.
You might want to do it on the other side because nobody on my camera. I mean, if you
You're just seeing my back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to. So this is called a safe leeward position. Like if you are the purple marker here, this green marker has no shot if you're sailing because you're going to stay high. This boat's sailing in a header. So they either have to go bow down to be in the right direction, in which case they're going to hit you, or they got to sail high, in which case they're going to be slow. And so if you've ever been in this position and you just feel like you just slide right behind that boat, that's because you're just in a bad spot. There's no way if that boat is sailing well that you're going to be able to hang. On the other hand, if you got bow even, right? So if you're here, now if you can hold this position, this boat's going to be in your shadow. You can get a little bow forward. This boat's going to be slow because they're in your wind shadow. And where that really happens all the time is right at the start, right? Like these two boats lined up at the line. Who's going to be bow forward? And if it's leeward boat, you're going to peel ahead. If windward boat gets your bow forward a little bit, this boat's going to get slowed down and you're going to roll them. And it's really that first 2 minutes.
Isaac, I've got some questions for you.
Yeah.
You were about to say there's a couple of different points to which are more important in the race. So I'd like you to finish that.
Oh yeah, sorry. This is all very stream of
stream
conscious. It's like a Ulysses novel. Or James Joyce novel. Yeah, so to start, the windward mark, definitely. So to start, windward mark. Leeward mark, if the boats are still together. So leeward mark is a good place to pick up, if 3 boats come in at once. How you do relative to those boats really can make there are big changes that can happen at that rounding. Several times I've had good leeward roundings and gotten ahead of boats that, didn't get their main in fast enough or whatever and went too far, took a bad turn, and then I just nosed in and you can pick up 2 boats that way. I think start in the first couple of minutes after that first beat or first part of that beat, I think windward mark, I think leeward mark. Distance races, I haven't really talked. Distance races, I always just feel like just slow and I can't say I want to reach on that one.
But my other question for you is back at the start line, right? So you were asking what we do. So the thing that I've been trying to do at the start line is timing. In addition to the things you talked about, figuring out the favorite side, is figuring out the time to do the various lakes in that 3 minutes, right? So whether it's your favorite sort of reaching out and coming back in, or doing the sort of 45-degree that Ed likes to do. Talk to me through what you're looking for in the timing in that, right? It's like, I know one thing I should be thinking about is how long it would take me on the tack I think I'm going to be to do the entire start line, because that's my error range, right? I know another thing is I've got some ability to not be coming in at full speed, so I can speed up, or whatever Molly's new luffing thing is that theoretically for reaching, right?
It's a thing.
But talk to me about how you time out those different parts for what you're thinking.
Yeah, so caveat here is my starts, I always feel like I'm early and I'm always late. So, take it with a grain of salt. But what I used to do was I was kind of not cheating, but I would just reach out and reach back and barge in because there's always that hole there.
And when you're cheating, that's
yeah. So
but say at the 3-minute mark.
Yeah. So here's what's going on in my head. Let's say ideally I'm somewhere that I can mark when the gun goes off. So if let's say I'm here. So I got 3 minutes to start. So I'll sail out. I figure it's about the same amount of time back and forward, and then I need a little extra time to tack. So when it gets to a minute 45-ish, I might tack around and start coming back. If I'm a little early, I know that I can always start further down the line. So I keep that in mind, better early. If I'm late, if this is a gun, I'm late, right? On the other hand, if I'm here and there's 10 seconds to go, I can go further. And then I try to sail the same speed, and then I try to just find a hole and go in. Problem is, this is, as we get better, there's going to be a balance.
Yeah, it should be.
So you said a minute 25, if you're giving yourself just 10 seconds
to tack. Yeah, I think 10 seconds to tack is reasonable. 10-second penalty for tacking. The other, I try to leave, I think it should be less than 10 seconds.
Speed dependent. I mean, wind speed dependent.
Yeah, if it was slower. If the wind is light, always give yourself more time. Also, always give yourself a little more time, because when there are boats around, if you're sailing out in clear air and you're sailing back and there's a boat here, you're going to be slower. And so if you've ever thought you timed it perfectly and then you're 20 seconds late and you're with a bunch of other boats, if it's light winds and there are 10 boats here and you're back here, I see this a lot on our starts, which is that people line up here, they'll take that long starboard tack approach. But the problem is there's 5 boats barging in. And so the breeze is like a quarter of what it was. And so they're stuck down here in a minute and a half after the start, because they can't get any speed. And it's just because they were there way too late. So I try not to get down here. I try to stay within a few boat lengths of the line, because you have more control. If you're down here, you just get stuck and you're done. I try to give myself a little extra time. And another really important idea is distance is time. So if you're early, sail farther, right? If you're early, you can just take a little stroll, right? Add some distance. And that happens a lot when boats are coming here and they realize they're early, and so you bow down along the line. You're just adding distance, right? So finding that spot to be in where you have room to leeward to bear off is really important. Room to leeward is gold in the start. If you have a boat right here, you're at their mercy, right? As long as if you have a boat here, I can't see this. Sorry.
No, no.
But I feel like you will. If you have a boat here, if you're a purple boat, right? Your options to bear off aren't good. So then you have to start controlling your speed with things like sail trim. So you're gonna have to be there early, right? If you're a purple boat, you want to be a little bit early, and you want to be able to slow down. And you want to be able to get to speed before you hit the line. You don't want to slow down here, because this boat's just going to roll. You want to slow down back here, trim in and get up to full speed to hit it. That's really hard. I mean, it's really hard, especially our boats slow and accelerate very slow or heavy, because they're not a dinghy, right? What I've been trying to do recently, like the last few races, was instead of starting out here, I was trying to be like around here at the 3-minute mark, and then I would time the line. So I'd be like, okay, it takes me 1 minute to get here. And then it would depend if I want to be like in the middle. I've been trying to do more middle starts because I've been really like starting at the 10 all the time. So I think, okay, it took me a minute to get here. If I want to get back to here, that means I have like, it's going to take me 30 seconds here. So I have 2 minutes left, I have a minute to burn. So I think, okay, I'll come out here for about a minute, tack back a little bit early, and then I'll come back like down here. So I usually like drive around. And I'll come back here, and as I'm coming back, I'm looking at the other boats. So I'm looking at where everyone's lined up. Because what you don't want to do is go down here to get around someone and then get late again, right? Because that really far from the line is where you just get completely, you end up way late. So if you're coming this way, every starboard tack boat has right of way over you. And this comes back to the collision thing. So this is where having a crew who's looking out and being really alert. So this is, I think the hardest part of a sailboat race is coming back on port, approaching the line. Because you're looking at what all the other boats are doing. You're thinking about where they are going to go and trying to predict and find a hole. And my goal is to come in about 2 or 3 boat lengths behind the line, tack in with about 30 seconds to go into a hole where I have room to leeward, accelerate, and then hit the line. I find that that's been working for me because that gives me, it's a lot easier to call time and distance when you're 3 boat lengths away than when you're 5 or 6 boat lengths away. And then I've been purposely trying to start on the middle of the line some. Usually there's more room in the middle. So if you're coming in, if you want to, if this side is favored, you don't have to be right at the pin. You could be like here. You could be most of the way to the pin, and that's most of the advantage, right? Or if this side of start is advantage, you don't necessarily have to be the closest boat to the pin as long as you're on that end. It's always more important to have speed, most importantly, and then timing be like pretty good. If it's a really competitive fleet, then your timing's not very good. You're going to get just spit out the back of the fleet. What do other people do? Like, what's your mindset as you're approaching?
I've tried both tactics. I mean, just trying to get a feel for it, but
it's like feels like short.
Like you said, if you're coming in on a port tack, it's harder to find that positioning in the fleet that you don't lose advantage though.
Yeah.
I mean, when you turn up, because everybody's usually on a starboard tack or the fleet, and it's usually a group of people at the same time.
Yeah, if you've got like 5 boats coming in together,
right,
then what you probably, this is where like quick decision making is important, right? Like your plan might have been to try and start right side. But if you get here and there's a pack coming in, the only way to get around them is all the way around, and then you're late.
Right.
So what you'd have to do is, if I saw that, I'm like, there's no way I'm getting around. I would dip down. I would add distance here, so I'd burn some time. And then I would tack to leeward of that pack of boats.
And tuck in behind them,
Yeah, and then I would try and be the leewardmost boat.
Yeah.
And then I would have control, they would all be over here. So I would be able to control
I usually
them.
target for one of the sterns of, well, not, usually the last boat, but, if there's a gap, I usually go for the stern of the closest boat that I can.
Yeah, and most of the time when I'm coming through, I'm looking for holes, right? I'm looking for like where I can thread. Because there's a lot of boats are coming different ways. And also they have right of way, they can maneuver too. But one of the limitations on how they can maneuver is, they can't maneuver if you don't have time to respond. So if you are a starboard tack boat, you have right of way. But if there's a port tack boat coming through, you have right of way until you get so close that your maneuvering makes it so that they can't safely sail your way, right? You need to, at some point, go straight and let them sail your way. Probably a good idea to yell starboard at them in case they didn't see you. But, this, I think, is the hardest, especially when the breeze is up. I always feel, I did most of my sailing in San Francisco, so it was always breezy. So I feel like when the breeze is up, I'm more comfortable. I feel like that gives me something of an advantage because I feel like the rest of the fleet's more conservative. And so I feel like I can,
Well,
Yeah.
plus it gives you more maneuverability, I mean, especially in these boats.
Yeah.
You know, they're more reactive.
yeah, the time you really get hammered on the start is when you tack under, there's like 5 boats here and you're trying to be here and the wind is light and then you just have no wind. And so you're just stuck. And then, if you watch some of the videos, it'll be like 5 minutes after the gun. And that's just because you're in such a bad spot. It's not like you're sailing badly necessarily. It's just you don't have wind at that point. You just get really does anyone else have any, like, besides like coming on port? Carrie always does this thing where she like dips down here and then comes in. I always like.
Yeah, Isaac, this is Steve. I've tried to come in on what I read in something was a Vanderbilt start. And my understanding of that was, yeah, you just go back a long ways from the starter line, you tack around and you come charging up through. It looked like a great idea to me, but what I found, of course, was that I was not crashing into, but trying to just maneuver around a whole bunch of boats to get in because they were in a big line and a pack going across. Is this kind of start legal?
Is what kind of start legal?
A Vanderbilt start?
Where you go down on Broad Reach and then come around and come up on a close haul?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, okay.
Over 1 minute across the line, right? I mean, Vanderbilt, you can come in from above the starting line.
Oh, yeah. That 1 minute is only if a special flag is up, which we never. So there's no 1 minute restriction for us.
Okay.
The race committee can do that, but I don't think we do.
Okay, I did.
So you can come in right before.
I always try to be across the line.
So, Steve, are you saying you're coming in so that you're trying to tack back, like you're crossing the line and trying to tack back close to the start, or you're going way below the line and trying to tack or
way below the line and then a front line attack? And the problem I usually run into is the big pack of boats right at the line that are going parallel to the line. I can't find a hole to get through.
Yeah, and if they're coming in, so you mean when you're going down?
No, when I'm coming back and I'm crossing the line.
Yeah, so if you're coming back, you have right of way over that. So if they're coming parallel, one nice thing about the Vanderbilt start is if you're coming in on starboard tack, close haul, you have right of way over everyone except anyone to leeward of you. And that boat to leeward of you can't really do anything to you unless they want to slow down. So in order to push you up, they have to come above close haul, right? So actually one of the nice things about this approach is that you have right of way. Again, that doesn't guarantee people are going to get out of your way, but you technically have right of way coming up. So if there's boats coming in like this, you don't have to give them room. You just yell leeward, come up. And the earlier you can do that, the better, so that they see that you're not planning on budging. And if boats coming in this way, they're on port, so they have to avoid you too.
Okay.
So this is actually the safest start as far as right away. I would say the problem with this start is make sure you're earlier than you think you need to be, because this is a dangerous place to be because disturbance in the air, and you're gonna have to maneuver a little bit. All that adds time. So what I see a lot is the pack of boats coming from down here hits the line late because they all slow each other down. So I would say try to be to leeward and ahead, and then that way, if you want to slow down, if everyone's late, then you're in the lead of the late boats. If everyone's early, that's hard, but you have a couple options. You can luff, right? You could even come head to wind a little bit. Just be careful that when you luff, a whole bunch of boats might just like go right behind you and you're in a bad spot.
I see.
The other thing you can do is if you have room to leeward, you can bear off to leeward and add add a little 10-second, 15-second like big S curve, add distance to your approach, time it better. But if you're starting from pretty far off, I would be early, and then I would, for an approach like this, I would probably try and like control my trim a little, like ease out the main, ease out the jib. Having good communication with your jib trimmer is really great in a start because that jib controls your speed so much. It's much more powerful per like surface area than your main. So if you can get your jib trimmer to ease and trim efficiently, you can control your speed pretty well. But you know, again, that's hard for me because these boats accelerate, slow down really slowly. I usually feel a little more confident adding distance rather than trying to trim. But again, I always end up trying to slow down, and I get too slow and I'm late every time. So. Oh, how are we doing? Do we want to take a break? It's been a while. I know we got like half an hour.
So, just, I'm curious, do people find that they can sail 45 degrees to the wind? My feeling is it has to be broader than that.
My tacking angles on GPS traces, depending on the wind conditions, are like 100 to 105.
Okay.
So, 50 some degrees tack to tack, depends a little bit. Yeah, so when I'm thinking about like, so when you're here, that kind of brings up like when to tack for the ley line. Like, you know, if you want to know which way you're going to go, you need to think 90 degrees plus. Like if I'm going forward, like if I'm sailing this way, so if I'm, I don't know, on starboard tack, if I'm facing forward in the boat, I mean, you know, basically take your arms back like this, right? You're going to be pointed behind you. This is another safety thing that comes up in for us a lot, which is that I've seen a lot of collisions because this boat will tack, and I think they tack because they look this way and it's clear. But if you're this boat on starboard, looking this way doesn't tell you what you need to avoid. What you need to avoid are the people back here. So you really need to be looking behind you so that when you tack, you don't collide with this boat. And I think sometimes what happens is people tack, they're surprised at the direction they're pointing, that there's a boat there. And that's because it's really easy to like see all this clear air over here and think you can turn that way. And remember, you're turning 105 degrees, right? And all of a sudden, this boat that was back here definitely comes into play. So when you're tacking, you're like literally looking behind you to see what's there, to see if you can clear when you come across.
I say thank you so much for I need to leave, but I really appreciate that you took the time.
Well, thanks for coming. Do we want to take a break or do we want to power through for 20 minutes?
Power through.
Power through. Okay. The other thing I really want to talk about was tacking, because I feel like tacking is something that I see, I think is an area where you can make a lot of gains relative to other boats. I think this comes down to a lot like the leeward mark, because when you tack, you really want to have a pretty crisp, quick tack, that 105 degrees or whatever. What you don't want to do is tack and not tack far enough, because now you're in irons, slow down, right? You're going too far, and then you like have to go down this way. And then your sails are over trimmed because you never use your sails at all. So now you're on a beam reach, but your sails are trimmed for a close haul, so they're completely stalled out. So it takes you forever to speed up. You need to start coming up to speed. Or tacking too far, right? You end up here, and it takes you a while to realize that your telltale isn't drawing, so you need to. So I think there's a lot of gains just sailing really good close haul and tacking well. I feel like I see a lot of boats under trimmed on the main and on the jib. So close haul, those should be in pretty tight. Like you want that jib in basically all the way until you know, the foot is, you know, almost touching the spreader or the shroud, so that you can sail as high as possible. And having the main in enough too is really important. The main actually helps your pointing a lot. So having your main too far out, and with these boats, it's kind of a balance. And I don't think I've like gotten it perfect, but I do think that I've been going faster since I've been trimming tighter, especially with the main and jib all the way in. And then when you think about tacking, I always try to visualize what I'm going to be pointed at. So think about when I'm finished with this tack, where do I want to be? And then ideally, you go through pretty quick and you point it at that. The best thing you can do, like if you really want to tack, is when you come through the tack, you're going to be a little slow. There's going to be an acceleration. If you come out a little bit fast, like a few degrees below close haul, your and you ease your sails a little bit. So the second key to that is you got to ease, otherwise you're stalled out. When your sails are you're developing force like perpendicular to your sails, right? So when you're trimmed in all the way, most of that force is heeling force. Only a little bit of it is the forward drive. On the other hand, when you bear off and you ease your sails a little bit, that perpendicular vector is now pointed forward more. So if you want to accelerate, bearing off and easing your sails a little bit is how to pick up speed. So anytime you're a little bit slow at the start, you're close haul, you need to get around someone, bear off a bit, ease your sails. When you're tacking, the very best thing you can do is as you're tacking, ease the jib and the main like a couple inches. If you ease it too much, then it's not good. It's a problem. If you ease it a couple inches, and you come out, like, 3 or 5 degrees low for like 5 seconds, and then gradually trim in up to close haul, it helps you accelerate out of the tack and get back up to speed because these boats are so big and heavy. You kind of need that push a little bit. But that's kind of like, you need good crew, you need good teamwork to make that happen. If you can just like nail the tacking angles, I feel like it makes a huge difference.
Do you think you can roll tack a rainbow?
I think you would need to have a lot of rail weight to roll tack a rainbow, because they're not very tippy. I think if you had a bunch of like big dudes on it, who are maybe.
So me and Stacey can't roll tack a rainbow.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure it'd be worth the.
I think you compromise weight to, then, I mean, because your weight would have to be so increased that I think that it would counterbalance any heat.
Yeah, although if it's really breezy out, then that's a benefit.
Yeah.
Having more weight on the rail.
In really light winds, right? If we put the weight distribution on leeward, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
So in a really light wind, I think that roll tacking might.
Well, the problem, so roll tacking requires so weight to leeward helps like give you a little more heel.
Right.
And so when you get a little more heel, you have a little less windward surface of the boat. And then if it's really light, gravity helps fill your sails out a little bit. And also it helps balance, it gives you that feel back of the weather helm. So when it's really light, the helm feels really squishy, and that makes it hard to stay in the groove. And you get a little weather helm back, it makes it a little bit easier. So roll tacking, in order to roll tack, what you have to do is as you come through the tack, so basically as you come through the tack, you're heeled over, but your sail loses power, right? So what you do in a small boat is you jump to the weather rail as you're tacking. So you like hike out more. And what happens is the sail comes up. So that flattening provides a wind direction more from a beam. So you actually have to ease the sail too to get the benefit of that. So you ease the sail, you flatten the boat comes through the tack, and then like you hit the old weather, then you like really hit that weather rail. And so that the boat and it's dinghy until you got water coming in the side, right? And then you jump up to the other side and you flatten. And it's that flattening that pulls the mast back up that you get wind from a beam. Again, you got to ease the sail for that to work. And that gives you acceleration out of the tack. And then you trim your sails in with that acceleration. Problem with the angular momentum to get the rainbow to do that, I think might be.
Yeah, because I mean, you have
not
a 1,000-pound keel on
yeah.
that thing. I mean, we're on a small boat like a laser or something.
Yeah,
you're just flipping the centerboard.
Yeah, and the speed of it, the amount of time it would take to do that, even if you could, would make your tack too slow anyway, right? Whereas on a small boat, you don't have that. Your angular momentum.
Let's see.
Yeah.
It'll be fun to try.
Yeah, we were roll tacking when we were doing the meeting.
Well, I think another important thing on tacking is figuring out how much rudder to use. If you turn too fast or too slow, you lose ground in the tack.
Or you go too far with the rudder. I mean, if you keep it turning too much, you turn up.
I mean, if you use too much rudder, you probably are slowing yourself down from drag from the rudder. And if you don't turn fast enough, you lose your momentum through the turn. So trying to figure out what's the right angle on the rudder. Of course, how much wind you have.
When sea condition.
And sea condition.
Definitely matters, yeah. Yeah. And the other thing, so that's I think a lot of these are feel issues, right? You know, because you really, when the seas are really pounding, you don't want to do a slow tack because the more time you spend head to the seas, you're just getting stopped, right? So you want to just whip it around. When it's a nice smooth day with moderate air, you know, you can do those nice, like really smooth tacks. The other thing I see as I talk with my crew a lot is not breaking the jib too early. So ideally, when you go into the tack, give everything a hard trim. Pull it in as much as you got as you go into the tack, and leave it cleated, leave everything trimmed in until it breaks. Like once it breaks, then, you know, strip the sheet, and you want to strip it fast. And then the other thing you don't want to do is you don't want to haul in on the jib sheet immediately, because what happens is if you're head to wind, if we're tacking, sorry, all who just sees the backside of me, I apologize. So if you're tacking, so you trim everything in tight, especially your main. When you trim the main in, it helps pull your boat across, right? Your jib, you're probably not gonna be able to get it anyways. It's all the way in. But if you pull your main in a little extra bit, that starts to turn your boat because it moves the center of effort back. So your main pushes your bow up. And so that's less rudder, first off. Then as you go through, so the sails will break about here. Like you want to keep that power. As long as you got power, you want to keep it because that's driving you through the tack. Once those sails break and it stops, you're going to be like right here. If you haul in on that lazy sheet, your jib goes up here, which is backwinded. And not only is it backwinded, but it's pushing your bow to the right. And so the slowest thing you can do in a tack is tack slow and try and pull in your lazy sheet before it's ready, because that's just going to hold your bow here. So what I do is I watch the clew of the jib. As soon as the clew of the jib clears the mast, that means you're head to wind. That means you're safe to trim it in. And this is also, if you trim in the jib right now, it's completely depowered. So if you have everything set, there's not a lot of extra slack. The amount of trimming you have to do on the jib at this point is like 12 inches or something. You get the jib pulled all the way in now, and then it sets right at the right point. Hopefully like 3 inches east, you accelerate, and then you trim it in. But I think timing the strip the jib, trim the jib is really important. And stripping the jib too soon, you just like lose that momentum. And one of the things, especially with these boats, is when you are slow, it's like you have no maneuverability. You're making tons of leeway because when you're not going forward, your keel is not providing lift. And so the only way to get enough lift is to make this higher angle of attack, which means more leeway. So staying, like, the other thing I preach on my boat is we do not attack when slow. Like even if we got to go extra distance, like if you're slow and you try to tack, you're going to end up slower, and then you're just stuck forever. So get up to speed. You want to be going as fast as you can when you tack, and then depending on the conditions, how fast you go through. But most importantly is get to the right spot and try and get your sails trimmed pretty quickly, because you know the amount that you can minimize being not powered up is like big gains and losses. But the biggest losses are you're down speed, you're in a bad spot, tack out, and like you said, so like you know you're at the start and there are a bunch of boats and you don't have any speed and you're like, I need to get out of here. And then you tack, and then you realize you're just like hanging out here and all the boats are sailing off and you're like spinning around, and then your like jib catches and your main's not in, and then your bow goes down because you have no like your keel's not doing anything. It's just like that. So always speed. That's what happens to people up here too, right? The other big thing I see a lot in our races.
Or small.
That one doesn't stick.
This one's not magnetic.
Nope.
Yep. Is people think they're on the ley line, but they're not. Right? So you think you're on the ley line, but you're not making the mark. You get here, and what you do is as you approach, you like realize you're not making the mark, so you start to pinch, right? So you start to point higher and higher and higher. As you point higher, you're slowing down. And so you start making more and more leeway, right? So it's, and then what happens is you get here, you're like basically head to wind. You have no speed. And there's nothing, and now you can't maneuver, and now you're crashing into people, right? Then when you start tacking, your jib's still cleated on the wrong side, your boat spins around, it crashes into people. So the thing to do is make sure, if you're not touching the mark, figure it out early. Pinching is not a good idea unless you're like right here. Right? Pinching can work if you are is like you are going to T-bone the mark. You have good speed. So what you do is you come up a little right at the end. That's the only time pinching works. It's not, even then, you know, I have squeaked around a couple times when it was like squeak around or else like get caught up in the mark and it's all a disaster, right? But don't start pinching here and just go slower and slower and slower, because as you slow down, you're not going to make the mark anyway, because you know your keel stops providing lift, so you get more and more and more leeway, and so you need that boost. So a lot of times, I feel like sometimes I hear people on like crew on the boat as we're like approaching a mark, they're like, we can make it, just like bow up, and I'm always like, when they're on the helm, I'm always like, bow down, like keep your speed up, bow down, because you gotta keep those tailtails pulling. Once you start doing this, you're slow, and you're only going to get slower until your bow goes back down. And so I would say avoiding this, like if you're not fetching, take the 2 tacks. It's not fast, but your best bet is take your first tack when you're nice and fast, at your fastest point. Get up to speed. You're going to be a little overstood. That's okay. Get up to speed, tack back. Now you're, you made it through your maneuvers. You lost a little distance, not too much. And you're coming at the mark nice and fast, so you accelerate quickly. You have a nice angle, you can get around and get going. But trying to make a mark you're not making is, I would say, maybe like the number one, I don't think disaster is the right word, but where it gets really like kind of rough is when someone.
And are you?
They try to
and
go.
if you're, I think if you're close to the mark, then you're better falling off though than trying to tack.
If you're, you mean if you're here?
Yeah.
If you're in this position here, it depends. Like if you're right here, it depends on where the other boats are. If there are a bunch of other boats on the starboard tack ley line, you have no rights. You cannot tack back. If you tack back, you're going to hit everyone, right? So if you're here and there are other boats, yeah, do a circle, fall off, jibe around, find a hole. So you come. Like you're like, oh, like if you're like here, like I think I'm making it, I get a header or something, or I'm not making it, and you're like, okay, I can try and pinch the mark, but I know I'm gonna stop. Bad idea. I can try and tack, but there's 4 starboard boats coming back here, or even way back here. Because remember, if you're down speed and you try to tack, it's going to be a slow tack, and you owe all of them rights. So if you tack here, you better be pretty sure that no one is gonna come to you in a while. Right? You need some time to get up to speed and get on it. So if you can do that, great. Like if there's no one around, tack back, you're good. But if that's not an option, bow down, right? You're still in an extra circle. Quick jibe, come back, and then you're coming on port. You still owe the starboard tackers room. You find a hole, right? You find a hole, and maybe you have to go bow down. You find a hole, you cross the line of starboard tackers, you tack back. It's not pretty, but it's not a disaster, right? You lose a couple boats, but you lost those boats anyway when you weren't making the mark. You had already lost those boats.
Another question, actually, and not related to tacking so much, but if you have 3 people on the boat as opposed to 2, does that do you change your tactics at all? Obviously, you have more weight, but do you shift people differently? Do you? How does it affect your strategy then?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how competent they are, and it depends on the type of race. The best is when you have someone who's really good at navigating, and you're on one of those distance races because it's so hard. For the short courses, if I'm not on the helm, then I like to do strategy and tactics. I like to tell the boat where to go. So it's kind of nice to have those 3 people, especially if you have someone who's not, who's not super experienced on the helm, because you can sort of talk them through. Okay, here's a good spot. Why don't we tack here? We're gonna go about 30 more seconds, then we'll tack. I think we're close to the ley line, but not there. When do you think, right? So when there are 3 people, I think it's nice to when you're not on the helm, because you can really focus on like other stuff. When I'm on the helm and there are 3 people on the boat, one thing is I make everyone scoot way forward. I think everyone wants to sit way too far back. Like when you're on the boat, the tiller should not be here. It shouldn't be in front of your body. The tiller should be behind you. And so, that actually makes everyone kind of squished together close on the boat. So, you can't have to ease your way into that. But I try to scoot everyone like basically up to the companionway. And then it depends on what the crew wants, right? Like sometimes they want one person eases the jib, one person trims the jib. Sometimes they want to take turns doing it. Like both is fine. When we're approaching the leeward mark, we'll talk about our strategy. Like, okay, so, if this is the leeward mark, we'll be pretty far away. And we'll start talking about what is the plan when we approach it. Like oftentimes, like especially if you're coming here, you're on a starboard tack, and you're gonna have to jibe around. And so I try to prepare the crew for what's gonna happen. Like, okay, so we're approaching the mark. We're gonna kind of get close to these boats, but we have right away. As we get around, we're gonna take a left turn. We're gonna have to jibe. And then I'll say, once we jibe, you're going to trim in the main. You're going to be on the jib. Once I say go, just trim the main all the way in. And then the jib, I just want you to trim it in slowly as we come around. I think I don't know, does anyone else have?
Well, also you want, having everybody up forward too, it centers it over the keel, so you have your weight balances better for turning. I mean,
yeah, so
I know on a rainbow it's not, but.
Well, especially going upwind. I mean, upwind, again, all the force from the sail, most of the force is sideways, not very much is forward. When you're going downwind, you got, the sail's all the way out. A lot of that force is actually pushing the bow down. So when you're going downwind, that is the time you can actually slide the crew back a little bit. But I think you're right on the rainbows. It's somewhat of a drop in the bucket. But on a dinghy, if you ever watch those, or catamarans or something, when they're going downwind with spinnaker up, they're standing on the very pointy back part of the boat, because all that force is stuffing their bow down. If you're in a catamaran, you're not like that.
I have a question on a different topic I mentioned earlier. If you're healing pretty well, so there's a good breeze out there, are you faster with keeping with the heel or depowering a little bit, staying a little more upright?
I think I start depowering when I start really fighting the helm. So because when you're healed, you have a lot of weather helm, so you want to round up, right? So if you find yourself really pulling on the helm, that's a huge break. That's slowing you down.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I gauge it. Like if I find I'm fighting the helm, I'll ease off. I ease the main, not the jib. I keep the jib in because the jib, you're not going to be able to point well. Our jibs don't cleat. I think part of the problem with our angles is we can't cleat our jibs very far inboard because of the shape and where the shrouds are. You can't barber haul it or anything. There's no good way to get your jib inboard enough to really point well. So if you try to ease your jib off to depower, you're just not going to be able to point well. I tend to do the other thing with depowering the rainbows is most of them don't have a traveler. So when you ease the main, the first thing that happens is the boom goes up. And so when the boom goes up, the sail gets really full at first. So in order to depower by easing the main, you have to ease the main a lot. So when the breeze is up that high, that's when you want to do vang sheeting. Like dinghies do this a lot because they don't have travelers, which is you want the vang on pretty tight. That way, when you ease the main, the boom instead of going up, you go out. And so you want to keep the leech, you still want to keep as much of the leech powered as you can. So I just try to ease the main out until the boat feels stable and comfortable. I don't worry too much about the heel angle. I worry about the feel of the helm. Anyone else? Depowering is a good question because I don't know that I'm doing it right. That's just how
What about the cars on the side for the jib? What's your philosophy?
I think generally, again, a lot of this is the boats are all different. The jibs are all different amounts of so I try the best thing to do, and I feel like we have a whole day on sails.
Yeah, that's true. We should.
Is look at the sails.
Yeah.
Moving cars forward and back on the jib. I think if the wind is up and you're moving cars back, it's like an inch or two. It's not 10 inches. It is because that changes as you move the cars back. You're trimming the bottom of the jib, but you're adding tons of twist to the top. And so the top twists off so far that, you know,
It's
if
going
it's
out.
like, yeah, and that's going to cause drag.
Right.
So for one thing, that's going to add to healing if there's a lot of drag. So I tend to do most of my depowering with the main. I feel like if I can't keep my jib fully powered up and ease my main out a bit and keep the boat up, then we're probably in reefing range.
Reefing.
Right. But the thing when the wind is up is if you want to bear off, you really have to blow the main. If you have that main on tight and the breeze is up, you are not going to be able to bear off because, you know, that weather helm is keeping, you know, that is holding the boat up. And so if it's a safety issue, like always make sure you can get the main off. Always make sure it's not tangled, ready to run. That's like a, in a really heavy breeze is the vang. Even the vang, if it's blowing 25 or something, the vang being on powers up the leech. And even that can make it hard. When I dock, I always blow the vang because I feel like that gives me very good control over like, because if the vang is on, your leech is powered up a lot, even if you don't really want it to be. But again, if you're needing to blow the vang in order to bear off, you're in like, probably we should not be racing.
Yeah, we should be.
Or, you know, a squall comes up and you're just trying to get to the dock and not.
Good times.
I was nervous. I was worried people.
I was enjoying it.
That last,
I mean, I know.
that last race when the squall came up.
Yeah, that was
yeah,
fun.
pretty exciting.
No joke. Oh, I think we're about 5-1. What do we think? Any last minute? Sorry, I feel like I stood up here and talked the whole time. That wasn't really.
Well,
I think
Ah,
that's
good
terrific.
stuff.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
So is there a plan for another one? I mean,
I mean, so I propose this as like a series,
Yeah.
and it sounds like we're gonna schedule another one in January sometime, and maybe I think Ian seems to be on board with about 4. I really would like to get the current person to come because I find
That'd
the
be
current
really
around
cool.
here very difficult
Yeah. Learn about that would be cool.
to understand. Yeah. Yeah. And then I think it'd be nice to do one where we just talk about.
And earlier, when you started out, you were talking about kind of like etiquette, like, you know, being respectful if someone, or if you feel like it's over your abilities. But, you know, we assign boats, so we have like 3 people. So,
Yeah.
you know, there's gotta be a courtesy there. If one, you know, I might feel comfortable, but the person that I'm, you know,
Yeah.
so there needs to be that dialogue for the people. Yeah.
I definitely got people off at the dock so I would feel nervous with my decisions before. They came back.
Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah.
They came back. It was okay.
Right, you made it back.
Yeah, Molly helped it.
She's an awesome sailor now.
Yeah.
Well, that's how you
worked out.
learn too. I mean, yeah, you need to push it.
Yeah, I think what I'm thinking more is like I think sometimes like there's a time to encourage someone to be on the helm. There's a time to be like, if you don't feel it, maybe not
Right.
today, you know.
One thing that perhaps we can think about for the future sessions is maybe bringing some video in then, where we could kind of show some of these tactics in action.
I don't know if Ian was. He may have been.
It is
That would be
being
good to
recorded.
post on their YouTube channel if they, I mean, I think there's a lot of
It
YouTube
is
channels.
recorded.
Yeah, we might want to keep that file and then, is Rick still on?
Oh, yeah, I see through.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sorry.
I mean, I think it would be good if it's okay with the school, and you might need to check on this, if we take this recording and post it on the YouTube channel for the school.
Oh, I think that would be great.
Okay.
We maybe not the first 15 minutes, but
It's all, you know,
I need a little crop in there.
I do editing for a nonprofit, and yeah, we always kind of clean it up a little bit so that, you know, the technical difficulties are cleaned out.
I'd like to go back and find the things that I said that were wrong.
Well, no,
That's
no,
what that.
Or at least put a little disclaimer.
yeah,
This
put a
is
little-
not true.
Well, you can put little captions down saying that we weren't right on this.
No.
But I think it'd be useful for the people that couldn't make it today, either on, you know, on the Zoom call or in class person.
Yeah, and I think these discussions also depends on like who's here. You know, I think the people who come are sort of the more gung ho racers as opposed to like the dead beginners, right? I'd be interesting to do one for beginners. You know, people who come out. this is a race course, you know, because I think a lot of people haven't seen this ladder rung thing. This ladder rung thing is key.
That's pretty cool.
And you know, every time the wind shifts, the ladder rungs shift with it. And so when we start talking about strategy, like on the race course, like knowing is the wind shifting back and forth, in which case an oscillating shift.
Sure.
In which case, you know, it doesn't really matter which side of the race course it's on. It matters that you're sailing with the pack. On the other hand, if the wind shifts once, or it continues to shift in one direction, if you're on the wrong side when that shift is, you're dead. And that's, you know, and talking about leverage on the course, you know, the side-by-side distance between both of them. So our best race, Lily and my best race was the end of season regatta, where it was a distance race where we just like kept right in front of the out to the bridge, where we had a whole long beat back where Carrie just like kept tacking, we just kept right in front of the whole
Oh
thing.
yeah.
And Morrison, if you're driving Carrie,
She's working just for that.
It's not. Yeah, because we're trying to avoid the separation. Because you get separated, then she could be in a different wind or current or something than we are, and then you know you're ahead, and then you're not. Right? And so the wind to split,
That's always
wind
a
to stay
challenge.
close. Not so much. These around the buoys are so short that it's more like what's the best side of the buoy. But the distance races, you know, you can make huge gains going one way versus the other. And knowing whether you're covering or you know is a
Also, just a question for jibs. Would people like to see window panes on the jibs for better visibility for the helmsman?
That's for sure.
Because we're actually getting a whole new set of roller furlers, which will also perhaps get at this issue of different sizes of jibs. I know you were talking about the fair leads and whether they should be adjusted and how they vary so much. So anyway, I just made note of that because right now I don't think they're being ordered with some clear plastic. So I'll check into that right away.
That would be great for seeing like crossing boats. You know. Yeah, especially around the start. I mean, you know, you're like ducking.
Well, yeah, so that's because I've actually seen some helmsmen that don't switch sides on the tack because they want to, you know, be on the leeward side so they can see what's going on. And so that's not so great for weight distribution, among other things. But
sometimes it's to see.
Well,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. What was that?
Sometimes it's to also read the tails on the jib.
Yep.
You get blocked if you go to that.
Yeah, well, one thing I was thinking when you were talking about the cars is the only way to tell if your cars are set right is to look at the jib, and you can't see it as a helmsman. You've got to have someone take the helm. You've got to go to the mast, and, like look at the whole jib, and then the best thing to do is have the helmsman turn into the wind slowly and watch the jib break. You want the jib to break evenly top to bottom. Like if the top is lucky and the bottom's not, then the bottom's over trimmed.
Yeah, you're reading the bottom only. Yeah.
I would say on reaching legs, especially, it was like an epiphany for me that all these reaching legs, my jib was out way too far because I was only looking at the bottom of it. And when you're reaching, you know, the trimming and everything changes. So then the best thing you could do is have a person go and be the lead to the jib and move their hand to the right spot. Problem is on the reaching legs, there's a lot of load and they're long. So it's very tiring. But setting that the first time.
That's one of his secrets.
Right,
that one.
Oh yeah, it's trimming the. I mean, for the reaching legs, I think jib trim is the main trim is easy to see. Like getting your jib is your gas pedal on the having that trimmed correctly. I will also point out that I am not fast on the reaching legs, so take out the consult. Also like the natural pause.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming out. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Isaac.
Thanks, Isaac. This is great.
Yeah, thank you very much. Excellent.
Thanks a lot, Isaac.
Thanks, Isaac.